We should probably start with Lynch. At least say a few words.
It's very sad. It's very sad.
Yeah.
But he was old. He is one of like the greatest artists of my life, I would say.
Even if you don't necessarily like his stuff, there's no artist in the world like Lynch. He was so much himself. And that is a very hard thing to ever be. And I think that is something that we should all celebrate and love. When we think about Lynch and what he did, and if we're admiring his career, and I was actually talking about Lynch last night with Steven because he's finally taken the leap of doing a feature, which is something I've been pushing him to do for many years. And I push a lot of my filmmaker friends to do because I believe that the feature is the epitome of cinema. And yes, a feature is a lot harder than a short, but I think that's kind of where film exists and lives and where we can tell our best stories. And we were talking about Lynch last night and that reminder that even after Lynch releases Eraserhead, which of course now incredibly famous, maybe his most famous movie other than Dune, just in the sense of the name itself that people know. But it is an important reminder that after he releases Eraserhead, for 2 years after he releases Eraserhead, he's still working delivering newspapers. And it wasn't
Right.
just he released
Yeah,
Eraserhead
to
and
confirm
suddenly
that.
he's this great filmmaker and everyone loves him. He still had to grind. And he got lucky that Mel Brooks saw it at a midnight showing and hired him to do Elephant Man. And of course, he went from there. But I think that is very important for us as filmmakers to remind ourselves. I'm working on this feature right now, and this feature has been a grind compared to Sir Mel
Yeah.
Hayes. It has just been so much more. It's so much bigger. It's so many more moving parts, so much more complicated. And it's a reminder that I'm not making this art so I can become a millionaire or, frankly, even make a living from it. I never expect to make a living from my actual art itself, whether that be the novel that I'm working on or this film or any of the other art that I create. I love the art that I create, but we should never be dependent on that for our income. We should never be dependent on that as our quote unquote career. And I think Lynch is a great example of that, of someone who was willing to make the work that he wanted to make and that he thought was best, whether that film was popular or not. And a lot of his work, not popular at all. Dune is a great example of that, but he made the Dune that he wanted to make. Of course, there are problems, and the original cut was much longer than what it ended up with, and that was outside of his control. But for all those out there, if they need some Lynch in their life, of course, every single streaming service is trying to release some Lynch film on their service in memoriam. I strongly, strongly suggest people listen to the audiobook Room to Dream because what's incredible about that book is it is a collection of moments in his life. And then the second half of that chapter is just David Lynch going off on some absurd tangent. And you get to hear his voice because he does read his own work and it's just him talking. And it's very personal and you feel very close to Lynch. And I think it's a great way to connect with Lynch. And of course, watching his work, I'm very excited to rewatch Mulholland Drive. But I think this is a moment to just to recognize how important of a filmmaker he is and the work that he does. And I do hope that there are future David Lynches out there and that they continue to make the kind of work that he was so prolific in and was able to create. But that's all I wanted to say about David Lynch. I thought it was important to kind of say something because he has
Yeah.
been so impactful on our lives. And he wasn't a young man when he died. I mean, he was 79 years old, and 79 is pretty freaking old for someone who smoked that many cigarettes. So quite impressive. Not necessarily gone too soon, but it's still sad to see because you're always hoping. I mean, look at Clint Eastwood. That guy's still making movies, and he's in his 90s. And you just kind of hope that there's always a Lynch project right out there, and you can always hope for that. And now that's gone. I mean, unless it's like a Mac Miller situation where you just release 1,000 albums after the person's dead. I mean, my God, Mac Miller, quote unquote, just released an album like 4 days ago, and that guy's been dead for like 6 years. So I don't think that's going to happen with Lynch, but it is sad to know that, we're never going to live in a world of a new Lynch movie. But I'm glad that we lived in a moment in time where we could live in the same moment as Lynch did. I mean, we lived through this third season of Twin Peaks, incredible, and a lot of
Yeah.
late work, which I would say, his late work is just as great as early work. Like there's really no bad Lynch era. So just glad to be part of it, man.